Check, check, check. Okay, guys. Um, we're back once again. I do want to let the room fill up a little bit. If anybody's gonna join us, that'd be great. Glad to be back here again, and we have a great topic this time. We're talking about why Enoch appears in the book of Jude. Okay, we're all familiar with the lore around the book of Enoch. Okay, but most modern Christians, including myself, I would consider myself a Christian and a modern one. Okay, we do not accept the pseudepigraphal book of Enoch. But the issue remains as to why a direct quotation from that book appears in the book of Jude. Okay. I want to make sure my live stream is working properly. I'm going to check some things real quick before I start. I'm new to this TikTok platform, and I just want to make sure that, everything's on the up and up. Okay. I see as people start to join, that's great. If you don't mind, would you share this live? Because I think this topic is really interesting. And classified scriptures is all about that. If you check out our YouTube, which I'm going to try to share right now, I'm going to try to share. Um, um, if you check out our YouTube, right, which I'm going to show you in 1 second. Like I said, I'm new to this TikTok platform. I'm using the TikTok Live application right now, and I want to be able to show you these things. Uh, okay, here it is. All right, you guys should be able to see that now. Let's see, I gotta raise it in the queue. There it is. So if you check out the YouTube platform for classified scriptures, what you're gonna see is a series of videos about the book of Jude. What did Jude, actually quote? Why did he quote it? The verse that wasn't there, the Johannine comma, uh, inconsistency in the book of Revelation that needs a resolution, and we provide it. Just a number of interesting video shorts for you to watch and enjoy. Go ahead and give us that subscription, man. We really would appreciate it. All right. So without further ado, we're gonna jump onto this lesson. Just well, not so much a lesson as it is a quick conversation of understanding why the book of Jude was quoted, um, quoting the book of Enoch. Okay, so let me just pull up some facts for you. So the book of Enoch does not appear as a part of our common canon, right? Um, it was during the Council of Laodicea that in 363 that the book was removed from the canon because they forbidded the worship of angels. And in the book of Enoch, that concept is present, right? Now, the Trinity being a very important doctrine to the Catholic Church, and a lot of the people that maintain the records of the Bible were Trinitarian. And they were staunch on providing a backing and a foundation for their novel doctrine of the Trinity. Well, the book of Enoch kind of contradicts that. So that was one reason it was rejected, but mainly because of the worship of angels. All right. Only about 5 to 10% of the book of Enoch can be verified via the Dead Sea Scrolls, which we use as like a benchmark, right? If the Masoretic text has it, if the Septuagint has it, and then the Dead Sea Scrolls has it, that is a strong proof that this is the original writing in its original form. And you can place your faith in that when you go into textual criticism. So only 5 to 10% of the book of Enoch exists in the Dead Sea Scrolls, but Enoch is a huge, just first Enoch, it's a huge book. So it is very difficult to verify whether or not those writings are authentic and whether they are for the edification of the church, right? So uh, where there is no complete single manuscript of Enoch anywhere, right? In Hebrew or Aramaic, it just doesn't exist. So, from a scholarly perspective, I reject the book of Enoch, not because I'm not saying that there historically never was one, although I do not believe that the biblical figure Enoch wrote the book of Enoch that we have. The scholarly consensus that is written by many authors. So I personally do not accept the book of Enoch on those grounds that it is penned after his name, but he had nothing to do with it, nor did the thought of a man from that time period influence these writings. I believe the book of Enoch is entirely second, third century creation, in my opinion, right? Which we all have an opinion. Now, there's certain things that you're going to see in the book of Jude that connect to Second Peter, because the book of Jude itself was a disputed text. I mean, we don't see the book of Jude in our canon until like the Muratorian fragment, which is probably the earliest canon list, but I want to say Jude comes later. Like, remember, Revelation was a disputed text. So Revelation was considered heresy until 100 AD. And I believe that Jude made it into our spiritual literature prior to Revelation. But when you examine the book of Jude, it has a lot of what seems to be borrowed inferences, and a lot of the scholars believe that Second Peter was written first, and then Jude was based on it. And then you have the opposing side that says no, Jude was written first, and Second Peter pulls from the book of Jude. All of this is important when we're discussing a, a book that's disputed, which is Jude. Second Peter is also disputed. It's important that when we discuss those books, we're talking about a book that's disputed that's quoting another disputed book. Okay, so it creates a myriad of issues as far as authenticity. But I just want to give you guys the facts. Okay, um, when you go to the book of Jude, chapter 1, and you read verse 9, I should put it on this. I should put it on the screen so it's easy for you guys. And then bear with me as I get this together. So I should put it on the screen so it's easy for you guys. Let's look at this. Can you guys see that? I hope you guys can see that. Okay. And what's up, everybody in the chat? I see you guys coming in. I appreciate the love. Now, check it out. This is the book of Jude, chapter 1, verse 9. It says, "Yet Michael the archangel, when contending with the devil, he disputed about the body of Moses and durst not bring against him a railing accusation, but said, the Lord rebuked thee." Now, I personally have no problem with that scripture. I believe that that is humility, that the Most High is in sole control and that he has no equals and that vengeance is his. And you have to wait for his order to make a move. So this would be in line with the theology that I believe in, right? Let's read on. It says, "But these speak evil of things which they know not, what they know naturally as brute beasts. In those things they corrupt themselves." You know, talking about those who invade the church and seek to arrest the minds of those who would believe, right? That's really what the book of Jude is about. It's about keeping order in the church and keeping the people away from being swayed by every wind of doctrine and brought into heresy. "Woe unto them, for they have gone the way of Cain and ran greedily after the error of Balaam for reward, and perished in the gainsaying of Korah. So these are all quotations from our Old Testament that are authentic, right? We know Cain was a murderer from the beginning. We know that Balaam spoke against the children of Israel in opposition to the Lord. And we know that the sons of Korah were gainsayers. They spoke against Moses, and the Most High destroyed them. So it's comparing those people who would invade the church to these biblical figures. These are spots in your feasts of charity. When they feast with you, feeding themselves without fear. Clouds they are without water, carried about of winds. Trees whose fruit wherewith, without fruit, twice dead, plucked up by the roots. So these are just bad people to have in your church. Okay? You don't want people like that. Raging waves of the sea, foaming out their own shame, wandering stars, to whom is reserved the blackness of darkness forever. Now we're getting into something that we're not going to see in our Old Testament, that language, wandering stars, to whom is reserved the blackness of darkness forever. Now you're getting into more of Enoch theology, where you have the watchers, and the angels are depicted in places of solitude, and I believe one angel is chained underneath one of the monuments in Egypt, things of that nature. So now you're getting into that already, right? It says, and Enoch, see, also the seventh from Adam, prophesied of these, saying, behold, the Lord cometh with 10,000 of his saints to execute judgment upon all, and to convince all that are ungodly among them of all their ungodly deeds which they have ungodly committed, and of all their hard speeches which ungodly sinners have spoken against him. Okay, so that's obviously the famous quotation from the book of Enoch. Where does that come from? That comes from, well, the beginning of it comes from Enoch 60 and 8, referring to him as the seventh from Adam. That's where you're going to get that from. You're not going to see that anywhere else, right? But I do want to pull the quotation from Enoch and put it on the screen for you guys, so that, excuse me, man, my allergies, so that you guys can see this and we can compare the text really quickly. Okay, watch how we do this. As you can tell, I keep like thumbing my nose, man. It's wearing me down. I gotta find a reputable place to quote you this. Mm-mm-mm. I should do the Enoch 60 and 8 first. Let me do that one. Because of the nature of the text, there's not a lot of great places to pull the book of Enoch for display purposes, right? Like you see, the King James presentation was really pretty. So I don't have the most pleasant to read examples. Okay. And then you got the problem of which Enoch are you going to look at? Because, some like 60 and 8, it goes into it, but then it's like, well, if you don't have the right translation, you'll be at a different place in the story. My notes, I have Enoch 60 and 8 and 93 and 3, right? For where it says the seventh from Adam. Let's see if I can pull a nice example of that for you. And if you guys have one in the chat, I'll take it. I mean, AI wants to do it, like, because these websites are pretty bad. AI wants to do it, but I want to like read above and below. Like AI has isolated the quote for me. And so we're doing a live Bible study. I know you guys don't mind. I have this website. It's called Christian Classics Ethereal Library. Man, this website's terrible. Ugh. So you're going to find section 5, that's 93. All right, let's try this one, right? I'm going to make it large so it's easy to see. Can y'all see? It needs to be bigger. There it is. Let's try this one. So Enoch 93 and verse 3. Enoch began to recount from the book and said, I was born the 7th in the first week, while judgment and righteousness still endured. So that coincides with what we're going to read from the book of Jude, which says that Enoch is the 7th from Adam. See? It is based on that quotation. Enoch began to recount from the books and said, I was born the 7th in the first week. That's where that comes from. Okay. I want to try 60 and 8 now. The other places I looked didn't line up. Let's see if this website does. Oh, this is terrible. Look how small it is. Let's look at this. I'm gonna try to make it as large as I can. Sorry guys, this is the best website I could find. If you look here, right, I'm gonna highlight it. Make it a little bit larger. See, it says abysses of the ocean over the fountains of the waters, but the male is named Behemoth, who occupied with his breast a waste wilderness named Dudane, on the east of the garden where the elect and the righteous dwell, where my grandfather was taken up, the 7th from Adam. So these are like the two references, right, where you can get the idea that Enoch was the 7th from Adam. It's not going to be written in your Old Testament for you to pull. And then that would have you say, well, then Jude had to get that from somewhere. And those would be the two places he would get it from. Now, does that make me a believer in the book of Enoch because of that quotation? No. And I'll explain why. But let's just give a little bit more history now that we've demonstrated that, right? The saying of Enoch here was quoted partially. These words are taken where an angel is interpreting a vision where Enoch has seen and where he's announcing the future judgment of God. Okay. So that's in reference to where he says, I will come with 10,000 of my angels. Let's find that scripture. Okay. Let's find that. That's going to be First Enoch 1 and 9. Now, let me get this website together before I put it on the screen and see if, this chapter is actually presented nicely. Check it out, right? I can enlarge it so y'all can see that much easier. So now, look at verse 9. It says, and behold, he cometh with 10,000s of his holy ones to execute judgment upon all, and to destroy all the ungodly, and to convict all flesh of all the works of their ungodliness, which they have ungodly committed, and of all the hard things which ungodly sinners have spoken against him. This is verbatim to what Jude has quoted. The 7th from Adam prophesied of these sayings, saying, behold, the Lord cometh with 10,000 of his saints to execute judgment upon all, and to convince all that are ungodly among them of all their ungodly deeds which they have ungodly committed, and of all their hard speeches which ungodly sinners have spoken against them. All right, fantastic. Fantastic. You have a direct quotation, right? A direct quotation. It literally says that. And then you have the book of Enoch as we possess it saying it as well. Well, this leads me to my next step with the Dead Sea Scrolls. What do we possess of Enoch in the Dead Sea Scrolls, right? I'm going to share that with you. I'm going to tell you how to find that. This is where Wikipedia becomes extremely useful. When you scroll down to the bottom, see this area right here? It'll start to talk about actual physical quotations and what manuscripts and where and the names of them, right? Here. So let me make this large for you. What you're seeing here are those listed from the caves of Qumran. This would be where I would yield and say, okay, this is authentic writing that Israelites believed in the BC times. Okay. I would not believe that the Enoch we have today is from BC times. I would believe that the Enoch we have today was written much later by many hands and penned after his name based on traditions. And I'll talk about that later. But these are authentic. Okay. Look what it says. And all these Q's represent Qumran. Okay. You got Enoch chapter 2, verses 1 through 5, 6, chapter 6, verses 4 through 8. Okay. Chapter 8 and verse 1 is what they have of chapter 8. Then you got chapter 8 and verse 3 through chapter 9, verse 3, and then verses 6 and 8. That's how you read that. Okay. I know that's small. I'm sorry, y'all. This is what it means, man. This is what, when you do this type of study, you go into the weeds with this thing, and this is where you are. Let me pull that back up. Okay, this should be much bigger. Yeah, there you go. But I want you to look at this. Look what was found. Enoch chapter 1 and verse 9. That is where the quotation from Jude comes from. See that? So that quotation from Jude, I would say that's authentic, which authenticates Jude's recollection, which also gives us a historical narrative saying that they were reading this during that time. Okay. Now, there's a ton to be found, but then there you see things like this. Chapter 79, 78. Large fragments that do not correspond with any part of the Ethiopian text. Large fragments that do not correspond with any part of the Ethiopian text. Okay? This is why I would say the book of Jude is spurious. I'm not going to bore you guys with more of that. You can do that on your own time. It's fun discovery. But what I'm going to say is the Ge'ez translation is the book of Enoch that modern English translations are based on. Okay. If what we're finding in the Dead Sea Scrolls and sections of it is all we have, pieces, fragments, but we're finding fragments that do not correspond with any part of that Ge'ez Ethiopian translation, I cannot accept this as spiritual material to base my salvatory decisions on. This is looking like spurious text, which is disputed. And it looks like it could be spiritual information, but it may not need to be taken so seriously. And I believe that the Christians during the time of Jude, Paul, and the apostles were aware of many writings like this. They were aware of pseudo writings. I'm going to give you an example of Paul teaching about that. Right? Look what he says here in the book of Titus, chapter 1 and verse 14. Paul says, as in his writing to Titus, he says, don't give heed to Jewish fables. So what is a Jewish fable? It could be the writings of Enoch. In my studies of the Dead Sea Scrolls, let me show you guys something cool. One of my brothers named Yara'al, he went to the Dead Sea Scroll exhibit and sent me some awesome artifacts and educational material. I also have a book. Give me 1 second. I'm gonna show you this book. I gotta go in my library. I also have this awesome handout. Now, this explains a lot as far as timeline and history when you get into the Dead Sea Scrolls. When you start doing textual criticism, you're going to consult with the Dead Sea Scrolls a lot because that is an independent witness. The Bible that we're using today is based off the Masoretic scribes for our Old Testament, and the New Testament, which is plenteous, but that's going to be from the Byzantine tradition if you believe in the King James authority, and it's going to be from the Alexandrian tradition if you believe in the modern text. Okay, Byzantine being the majority text. Blah, 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 blah. I'm boring you guys. But look, check it out. The Dead Sea Scrolls, it's something interesting about them. All spiritual material was bound and sewed together in a codex. And things that were considered as leisure or entertainment or non-spiritual were always loose. They were not bound with anything. Guess what the book of Enoch was? It was unbound. It was never bound with the other prophets as a collection of spiritual material, which is a hint that it was entertainment literature, or even at the time of its collection in Qumran, it was considered extracurricular reading, right? Something for you to think about. Let me get some more facts for you. Check this out. This is from Cambridge University, right? Who curate the King James Bible. It says, it is more natural to suppose that when he quoted this in Jude 1 and 14 through 15, he felt it was edifying, but he probably received this quote through tradition. This is the opinion of the people that bring you your King James Bible who did not include Enoch. He probably received these quotations through tradition, independent of the book of Enoch, something that we have no traces of, or that he was guided by a special inspiration to set the stamp of authenticity upon the one genuine prophecy that the apocryphal writers left in a mass of other fantastic inventions. All right, let me make that plain. Basically, what he's saying is, it's very possible that Jude believed that that quotation was authentic. And remember, when we were looking up the books that were found in the caves of Qumran, this verse was found. Okay? Now, don't get superstitious. In all your biblical literature, you and I both know that prophets repeat themselves. You'll find things that Jeremiah said that are exactly the same as Isaiah. Joel said things that are exactly the same as Amos. Ezekiel said things that are exactly the same as Solomon. What I'm saying by that is, it is not necessary that that statement that Jude quoted has to be from Enoch. It could be tradition. This is what your King James translators are saying. And it could be tradition to attribute that quotation to Enoch. That does not reverse engineer the authentication of the book of Enoch we have right now. I hope that makes sense. All right. That's a little murky, and I will get better at explaining this. I've never taught on this, so I'll get better at explaining this in the future. It says, a reader of the English Apocrypha may find the nearest acceptable approach to the class of literature which Enoch represents as similar to the second book of Esdras. That it's profound, it's a little pessimistic, it has elements of poetry and a unity of purpose. But the book of Enoch stands at a lower level than second Esdras, belonging to a class of writings where the decay of Judaism had begun. And St. Paul calls those old wives' fables. 1 Timothy 4 and 7. I read you guys Titus. Let's get 1 Timothy 4 and 7 is the one they chose. And let's look at that. Look at that. Refuse profane and old wives' fables. Exercise thyself rather unto godliness. Why would he be telling you, why would you be asked to refuse these old wives' fables? It is because there are Jewish fables in circulation during this time, which the scholarly consensus, there, it's not fair to say scholarly consensus because it's debatable, but the majority of scholars agree that the book of Enoch we possess today are an example of those Jewish fables that are in circulation, because many things in the book contradict the Old Testament. And there's also anachronistic statements in the book, meaning there's things written in the book of Enoch that didn't happen until second and third centuries. So it's like, why are you talking about that if Enoch's supposed to have written this? Obviously, this is written by many authors who were adding to it over time. Okay. So when it comes to Enoch's quotation, I would say the most balanced approach is to not be superstitious. And if you read it the way that the Qumran caves classified it, as extracurricular literature. It's not meant to be taken in the same spoonful as your accepted canon, like Isaiah, Nehemiah, Jeremiah, Proverbs, Psalms, and the like. It should just be seen as biblically based material that loosely contains ancient quotations that can be authenticated. However, as a whole, it is most likely the works of modern men's hands, and falls into that category of Jewish fables. All right. And we are asked as Christians to abstain from that. But if you're balanced and you're strong in the faith, go ahead and read it and enjoy, just to be knowledgeable of its subject matter. But my counsel would be not to see it as primary revelation. Okay. So my name is Brother Joel. That's my opinion on the book of Jude and why that quotation appears there. Look forward to more history like this. This video will be posted on the Classified Scriptures channel on YouTube if you want to watch it again and copy down some of the sources that I brought forward. You guys have a blessed day.